This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Merry Christmas and welcome to a brand new Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. Birthday Boy for today, Christmas Day. December the 25th is not living anymore. I know that I do living players, but I mean, when I look at December 25th, and I did the Birthday Boys on Ricky Henderson and Larry Sonka in previous years. Those were the only two. And then this guy. Everyone knows who he is, I think, if you are an Oakland Raiders fan, you know who the heck he is. Yes, I still call them the Oakland Raiders instead of the Las Vegas Raiders. I do that a lot. But anyway, Ken Stabler was the Snake. Born on Christmas Day in 1945. He was a highly touted football player in Alabama, and he actually excelled as a decent left-handed pitcher, so much so that Houston and New York, well, the Yankees offered him minor league baseball contracts. But he wanted to play football more than baseball. So anyway, he was recruited by the great Bear Bryant for Alabama, you know, the Crimson Tide. Stabler was on the freshman team, and then once he was eligible to play on the varsity team as a sophomore, he took over for Joe Namath. Joe Namath left because he was a senior and went to the AFL instead of the NFL, and so they needed it. But Stabler was basically a backup to Steve Sloan, who was an underrated quarterback in a sense. So anyway, Alabama in 1964, when Stabler was a freshman, Alabama did win the national title game. Well, actually won the national championship, but lost their bowl game to Texas. Now, the thing is, before 1968, you could be a national champion before a bowl game, but still lose. Of course, that was the year that Arkansas should have been named national champion. Full national champion, not part national champion. As a sophomore in 1965, he was used sparingly. But the Crimson Tide did win the national championship, beating Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. But as a junior, he took over at the starting quarterback position and helped Alabama rout Nebraska in the Sugar Bowl. Somehow, Alabama, despite being 11-0, were not the national champions for the third straight year, as Notre Dame and Michigan State were ahead of them, and both didn't even get to the bowl game. Michigan State didn't even get to the Rose Bowl. Of course, at that time, the Big Ten only sent one team to postseason play, not multiple. And Notre Dame had a tradition of snubbing bowl games until 1970. Expectations were high for Stabler, but the offense crumbled. They were 8-2-1, losing to Tennessee. Stabler was actually kicked off the team for cutting class and partying, but he was given a second chance. He would have a massive play against Auburn in the famous Iron Bowl at Legion Field in Birmingham. The Tide won because of the run in the mud. As a collegian, he threw 18 passes, 18 touchdowns, 18 interceptions for 2,196 yards. But remember, this is back when college running was more of a necessity than passing. So you can't really judge people on that mark. So the draft happened in 1968, in which both the AFL and NFL could compete for players. And Stabler was picked in the second round by the Raiders, who were the AFL champions at the time. So what happened is that there was an NFL team. I don't know how they did all that. But as a quarterback, Greg Landry was the first quarterback taken from UMass by the Lions, who 11th overall. Landry was a decent quarterback. If you're a Lions fan, you know he was pretty good. Oakland took a quarterback before Ken Stabler. People forget about that. 25th overall, they took Eldridge Dickey. I kid you not, that's his name, from Tennessee State. He sucked. The Rams took Gary Beeman, who was a Heisman Trophy winner with UCLA. That didn't work out so well. Well, LA Rams, LA. Kansas City took Mike Livingston from SMU, 48th. He was okay, but he wasn't that great. And then Stabler went 52nd to Oakland. All that. So he was the fifth quarterback taken. He was drafted by the Yankees, Mets, and Astros in baseball, but refused to play for them. So Stabler signed a 2-year contract with the Raiders in 1968. He went to the Continental Football League to Spokane which I guess was kind of a minor league thing. So, anyway, Stabler left the Raiders organization in 1969, then decided to come back for training camp in 1970. Fortunately, though, nothing else much happened. But anyway, Stabler was the backup to Darryl LaMonica, but because LaMonica was flu-ridden, Stabler was the starter in the famous Immaculate Reception game. This is a stat I knew that Stabler ran for a touchdown in the Immaculate Reception, and that's why the Raiders were up 7-6 before Franco Harris's famous play. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't know that Stabler was not slated to be the starter. It was supposed to be LaMonica. But yeah, it made it 7-6, and then that controversial Immaculate Reception. After knee injury, Stabler stopped being a scrambling quarterback and decided to be a drop-back passer. He was known for accurate passes and come-from-behind plays. He had a great receiving core of Cliff Branch, Fred Blitnikoff, who was sure-handed, but he used Stickum, and Dave Casper. Those three would end up in the Hall of Fame. And they did have some good running backs. Marv Hubbard and Clarence Davis were good in the backfield. Stabler didn't really have arm strength. He was a master of the long pass. With the famous Sea of Hands play against Miami to knock off the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. Great passes to Casper that goes to the post. He did all that. He was the NFL passing champion in 1976 and helped the Raiders in 1977 win the Super Bowl against the Vikings in the Rose Bowl in Super Bowl number 11. He was actually given the Hickok belt given to the top pro athlete. Wow, 1976. Of course, he was known for the goes to the post legendary pass. That was not the touchdown pass that sent the Raiders to beat the Colts in double overtime. That was to tie the game. And then Casper had a simple pass. Stabler was known for what they call the Holy Roller, second game of 1978. When Stabler, with the Chargers up 20-14, purposely fumbled the ball forward and made it like a fumble. And all that, and forward fumbled by two other players to score a touchdown and win the game. Unfortunately, though, the next year the NFL stopped that thing and says that only the fumbling player during a fourth down play or any play after the 2-minute warning is that only the fumbling player can recover the ball and all that. Well, forward fumbling it was kind of illegal too. Yeah, he was known for the Holy Roller play. The Raiders failed a couple of times to make the playoffs. They decided to trade Stabler to Houston for their starting quarterback, Dan Pastorini, which was shocking. I mean, Ken Stabler was one of the best Raider quarterbacks of all time, and you decided to throw him under the bus and trade him? Yeah, at the time, he was the all-time leader in completions, passing yards, and touchdown passes. He almost got 20,000 passing yards for the Raiders. Touchdown passes, 150. The others thought they could use Ken Stabler as the missing ingredient to beat those pesky Steelers and get to the Super Bowl, because Houston twice went to the AFC title game and lost to the Steelers. But Houston lacked the exceptional talent on offense. I mean, Earl Campbell was still around for Houston, great running back, and Dave Casper, who was traded to Houston in a different trade. All that went there. So he tried his best for Houston and all that. Which was, the funny thing was that Houston and Oakland had to face each other in the wild card game for the trip to the divisional playoffs, and the Raiders won. Well, it wasn't Dan Pastorini who sunk Houston. It was Jim Plunkett. As Pastorini was injured, Plunkett then had a great comeback season. He was a former number 1 pick that was basically put on the back burner by the Pats and the Niners. And somehow he helped the Raiders win Super Bowl 15. Anyway, Bum Phillips would be fired and succeeded by Ed Biles. Stabler was upset by Bum Phillips being fired and did not report to training camp. He actually announced his retirement. However, after 5 weeks and with Houston losing their starting quarterback Gifford Nielsen, he reluctantly went back to the Oilers and signed a 2-year contract and had a mediocre season. Stabler would then, after that season, his second season with Houston, be released, and New Orleans picked him up. And guess who was the coach? Bum Phillips. So anyway, the Saints decided to trade Archie Manning, which was a dumb move in my book. But of course, you know, the first year Stabler was in New Orleans was because of that players' strike that only saw 9 games. New Orleans did go 4-5. In 1983, it was his best as a Saint. He was 7-7. Started 14 games. Stabler almost helped the Saints get to their first playoff appearance in team history in that 83 season. They needed to beat the Rams, but they lost 26-24. The Saints would require Richard Todd from New York, from the Jets, and Stabler decided to retire in the middle of that season. Stabler was actually the fastest to 100 wins, doing so in 150 games, but that's not the record, as Tom Brady, with 131 games to win 100 games as a starting quarterback, is the record holder. Stabler almost went to Birmingham of the World Football League, but that contract was to be for the 1975 season, so he was still playing in the 74 season for the Raiders. Of course, the World Football League folded, and Stabler did not play in the WFL. Stabler was announced into the Pro Football Hall of Fame August 2016, after many years of people saying he should be in the Hall of Fame, but he never got the votes. So yeah, so Ken Stabler, 96 wins as a starting quarterback. I think that's it. 100. Oh yeah, I guess playoffs too. In the regular season, passing 27,938 yards, 194 touchdowns, but 222 interceptions. So logically, you know, he was good at quarterback, but he threw too many interceptions to count, especially in Oakland. Stabler actually had the record for most consecutive appearances in a conference championship game in the NFL era, in the merger era. When he did so, from 73 to 77, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, he went to conference championship. That record was held until Tom Brady, 2016. As a broadcaster, Stabler was a color commentator for CBS NFL televisions and helped Alabama football games. He left before 2008. He's known for his charity work, part of NFL Street video game, part of All Pro Football 2K8, which was a great PS3 game, and all that because it had all the legends. The problem was that when you created a team, you had to have some no-name players, and just like only 2 or 3 legends. By the way, the Snake, Ken Stabler, inspired wrestler Jake Roberts to adopt his name, Jake the Snake Roberts. Stabler was married 3 times, having 3 daughters. One of his daughters, Alexa, is a sports agent. He was known for his off-field exploits and all that. With the Raiders, he says, we were the only pro team that traveled with its own bail bondsman. Stabler, unfortunately, would die of colon cancer July 2015 at the age of 69. All that. However, researchers at Boston University said that he had stage 3 CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, in his brain, with repeated hits to the head, because the helmets were not that great back in the day. But Ken the Snake Stabler is still the best quarterback in Raiders history, at least by my count. Anyway. And I'm Jeff Diamond. Merry Christmas. I do.